A discussion on Satan and demonic possession. Of course, Satan does not exist, demons are just badly behaved boys and deep down we are all good people. One only needs to find that spark of goodness that is in all of us. Or so the liberal mantra goes. But there is some truth in what they say, if we look at things in a particular way. Demons do not have physicality. Neither do tables and chairs. There is no way to prove that demons or Satan exist. No one can conduct an empirical study that will demonstrate Satan and his demons have a real-world presence. But we cannot conduct an empirical study that proves you or I exist, either. Empirical science does not deal in proof. Experiments change bias. They make a position more likely and a proposition more probable. Nothing is true in science, but it might attain to the level of being a fact. Facts are physical and confirmed by phenomenological experiences. Truths are metaphysical and can only be established by analysis, or analytical reason. Devils and demons are not physically true, they are analytical necessities. Satan and his demons cannot, logically, not exist. We can be in the physical world where there are no gods, demons and devils, but no salvation and no absolute truths either. Or we can be in the church in which God does exist and by extension, there is the devil and his demons but also salvation and a risen Christ. The choice is up to us, but it is an absolute and metaphysically necessary choice to make. The default, as the Bible makes clear, the reality of physical fact and phenomenological experience. It is obvious, or ought to be, that the devil cannot have power over physical substance. The nature of physical reality does not permit alien and spontaneous force. All power is from the expenditure of energy, and all energy comes from the generation of entropy. But the devil cannot have power over the analytical either. Such a claim is logically contradictory. If truth is analytical and logical, no power can alter the truth. God spoke reality into existence, as information transmitted to his creation. The devil has no power to change this information. And so, the question is asked, how can the devil even exist? In asking the question we answer the quest about Eden. What was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and why did man eat of it? What we know is that it was not ours to use. We know it was visible and enticing. We know that upon eating of it, man not only was separated from God, but he also no longer specifically needed God. The closest approximation of what the tree was the embodiment of the state. The state is the way man governs himself. Thus, he was ejected out of Eden, which might be considered ecclesiasticism, to exist in the democratic and tyrannical systems of government man uses. If we think of the devil as the state, then demonic possession becomes more understandable, and we understand how the devil can have no power and yet rule the world. But remember, it is mankind that makes all of this possible. In Eden, God provided for man. He tended the garden, but the organization and operation were handled by God. Once we separated from God, we had to work to make the earth produce its fruits. At the beginning we do not see the state, and so the devil lacked leverage. But he was not absent. We see the impetus for the state in the story of Cain and Abel. Cain wanted status and thought he could earn this by his offerings. Cain killed Abel when he saw his status diminished instead of uplifted. After killing his brother, he told God he was not his brother's keeper, proving he was not a true leader. This led to Cain being cast out also. This demonstrated a further rejection of what his father had done, making others pay for his mistakes. This is important when it comes to understanding demonic possession in the state. We have mentioned that in the early days, the devil lacked power regarding man. The reason for this will be obvious as we understand more about the state. In pastoral settings, every man is part of an extended family, or part of a tribe. It is not just the familial bonds that block the machinations of Satan, the state is no more than an extended family. The head of state is the eldest male, usually the father, grandfather or uncle of those under him. Allegiance and service to the head of state is no more than honoring the head of the family. We cannot claim Satan has no power in subsistence cultures or pastoral economies, but the impact is generally limited and confined to individuals. It was possessing Nimrod that served as the watershed event. In creating the state, possess whole groups metaphorically by possessing the ruler. Control of a king gave Satan control over a nation. Control over the mechanisms of power gives the state control over the people and systems in which demons can operate. Most people will assume that the devil is most active in dictatorships and powerful monarchies, but these are as limited as the power of the ruler is constrained by the need for support. The king is never powerful alone. He needs a substantial number of persons willing to support him so long as they are likewise benefited. The real power for Satan is in democracy. But remember, it was said Satan has no actual power because he has no physicality to move physical things or cause physical events. But neither has the state. This is why the state is a metaphor of Satan. When we look at the character of the state, we are looking at the face of evil. It has been mentioned that the world was created by God, not Satan. We can modify reality, but we cannot add to it nor subtract from it. The devil is in the same situation we are, as regards God. But there is one distinction. Humans can be perfected. We have that choice. The devil committed the unforgivable sin. Mankind was born in sin, but we can be reclaimed, if we choose. But the devil is working in the world, and a lot of the things we think are true, are demonic. Much of our understanding of Scripture is a consequence of blind guides. They read the Bible but take verses out of context. But sometimes it takes realizing that these truths of Scripture are grounded in the logic of God. God is not the author of confusion. We might attempt to make sense of something in Scripture but miss other relevant passages and not understand how they are linked. But we know, in the end, everything has to be logically coherent. There is nothing in the Bible that conflicts with anything else in the Bible nor with logic itself. God created logic to contain us, so that we could not diverge from the truth, if we wish to find it. So, we know faith does not save us if it is a faith that does not perfect us. A faith akin to that of Satan is not the faith that produces works, but this is the faith many rely on. With this sort of faith, we are open to the machinations of Satan. The tactic Satan uses to gain power is known by many phrases. The most common phrase is making a deal with the devil. People do this in many different ways, but it all comes down to what in Latin is called a quid pro quo. You do something for me, and I will do something for you. This might appear to be an exchange. It seems akin to what happens in a free market. But it is the subtle difference that matters. The state has nothing to give. Ultimately it operates according to the law of the jungle. The law is merely a way to provide a quid pro quo, which still furthers the state's, and Satan's, agenda. The law of the jungle has two parts which are interrelated: might makes right, and the end justifies the means. However, in a relationship where there is a power disparity, it makes sense to create a client relationship. This is where the law comes in. The subject agrees to be ruled by the powerful, if the powerful agrees to protect the client from being exploited by other aspiring rulers. This is also called a protection racket. It is important to understand this to understand how demons operate. First of all, there has to be a power disparity for law to exist. This power disparity has to be exploited to benefit the powerful. The quid pro quo is never an equal trade-off where the seller would simply respond to the needs of the buyer. In a protection racket, the implication is that if the asked for price is not paid, a worse cost will be exacted. In Eden we do not see an exchange because the devil had nothing to give but lies, yet, by denying God, Adam gave the devil his allegiance. Adam put his faith in the devil, rather than God. But that is the crux of the matter. The state has nothing to give but solutions to the problems it and it alone creates. But if this is so, there must be an alternative. This is the ecclesiastical system, the system of governance decreed by God. It is far more complex than humans understand, but yet simpler than anything humans have devised. The main difference is that ecclesiastically, we create value. We do this by adding value to the things of God. Biblically, this is what is called building the church. Obviously, most of this appears to be a strange way of discussing these issues. It is indeed different than what the world tells us. But remember, the truth of God is analytical and demands coherence of its statements. It does not have to be consistent with the world's claims. Passage in this regard is 1 Timothy 5:18. In the eyes of God, the worker is worthy of his wages. It is the work of the worker that adds value to the things of God and by this means, builds the church. Remember, the church is not a building, but a system of administration called ecclesiastics. As we perfect the operation of the church, it is built, and it bears fruit. It is through the church we are perfected, and through this perfection eliminate the church and the demonic possession represented by the state. There are 10 great evils associated with the state. These are unemployment, debt, poverty, inflation, pollution, waste, taxation, homelessness, war, and crime. This evil exists because the state is a con man, playing a con game on us. As said, the state can only solve the problems it creates, and saying it solves any of these problems is a lie, because it creates them, it needs them. All it can do is reduce their severity. Perhaps we need to go back to basic to be clear about how this works. The state is a direct heir to the law of the jungle. It imposes its will on the weak and does this by promises to reduce the problems it causes if we the people cooperate. The state claims to own what belongs to God. In the worst-case scenario, the state lays claim to a political jurisdiction called the nation. It assigns certain portions of this landmass to those who pledge allegiance to the state. It licenses the use of this land but retains a claim on it. Property taxes, capital gains tax and other taxes represent the state's claims on the land. The state cannot add value to the land. Indeed, since the state claims the land, adding value to it would not contribute anything to its receipts. But instead of adding value to the things of God, the worker now adds to the value of the things owned by the state and the things owned by its agents. The state taxes away part of the wealth created by labor as its share of the profits produced by labor. But the state faces a dilemma, because not only does the state not do, it has nothing of value to offer to those who create value through work. This ought to be obvious. On this note, we on the right ought to realize the part we play in maintaining this demonic system. We participate in it, but we cannot win in it, because it is demonic. We will not and cannot call on devils to help us, or work with us, because we are not evil. The only way we can defeat those who align with Satan, is by being eviler than they are, or by ceasing to fight them using their systems and tools and on their terms. As it is, at best, all we fight is a defensive war, and a defense war is one we cannot ever win. This is why conservatives, when they win an election, halt the evil for a period, and then it begins again, this time worse. The word for embracing Satanism is liberalism. All the elements of society are liberal, and the employment of these liberal institutions and systems is satanic. That is the truth. The alternative is ecclesiasticism, the use of biblical organizations, to counter Satan. Ecclesiastic stands in stark contrast with the state. The state produces nothing, and so everything it gets and does, costs others. It is this rapine of the worker that produces the 10 great evils. The worker does not need the state, but the state is absolutely dependent on the worker. A person who works and pays their own way, has no use for the state. In fact, only a freeloader needs the state, so the state finds it in their best interest to increase the number of persons living off of, or who are dependent on, the state.